Hey everybody, what's up? It's Nicole. Welcome back to my channel, Real Talk Recovery, where we talk about recovery from addiction and I share my life with you. My name is Nicole and I'm an addict, and my sobriety date is July 13th, 2014. And tonight I have a special guest, you guys, my dear friend Jexi from According to Jexi. I am going to link her channel right now at the top of the chat, so that way you guys can find her. Um, and I really want to encourage you guys to go over to her channel and subscribe. Jexi is a really good example of what recovery looks like, and she's super honest, just a good person all around, and I support that. I really think she has an amazing message, you guys, and she helps a lot of people, and I love that. I love that. So while we're waiting for Jexi to sign on, you're going to hear my husband and my son talking in the background because they're walking out the door. They're fixing to go get us a burrito from down the street. But while we're waiting for Jexi, I just wanted to come on here and kind of get you guys ready. I have not heard Jexi's entire recovery story. So while we're listening, Nate, you know what I'm doing. Just go with your dad. I don't know. There's your clogs right there. I haven't heard in the back seat of my car. I haven't heard Jexi's whole entire recovery story, so I'm excited to hear it because like I said, I haven't heard it all before, and I feel like on my channel, you guys, I've told every story I can tell about my active addiction. I've told every story I can tell about my sobriety. And so now I feel like I can use my platform to share other people's stories and help them get their message out there, because I think it's really important as recovering addicts and alcoholics for us to share our experience to help benefit others. For a long time I lived in shame because I felt like my story was something for me to be ashamed of. And what I'm learning now, the longer I stay sober, is that there's nothing to be ashamed of. There's no reason to be ashamed of your story. So please, Silencio. Bye bye. Hey, Jexi.
Hi.
I'm adding you to the street, friend. Yay! Does that look good? Yeah, that looks really good. Okay, so here's the tea. If this freezes up a little bit, don't even worry about it. Sometimes it'll kind of freeze when we're in the middle of talking, but okay. I think it'll be okay. For the most part, everybody will be able to hear you. So this is Jexi, you guys. Welcome to my channel, Jexi. I'm so excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited.
I'm excited too. So what I was wanting to know is if you could share with us just what it was like before you got sober, what it was like during your active addiction, and what it's like now in your recovery.
Okay. So I break up my active addiction into two sections. There's when it was still fun and exciting, and then when it was an absolute disaster. Yeah. Because a lot of my history of using, especially when I was younger in high school and college, I loved to use. I liked partying. I thought it was fun. I didn't see a problem with it. I didn't really feel any of those negative consequences, right? And so it never occurred to me, I kind of knew I was an addict all along because I used differently than other people. I felt like I always needed more than others. I always, I felt like I never got as high as other people or as drunk as other people unless I did way more. Yeah. And then, so I always felt different, but I never really thought there was a problem. It wasn't until a couple years before I got clean that my addiction took a totally different turn. I was married to a wounded soldier. He had a lot of issues. He had traumatic brain injury. He had PTSD. He had a lot of physical injuries, and he was really absent in our marriage. He wasn't really able to, he wouldn't talk to me. He wouldn't want to sit next to me on the couch. Forget being intimate, it was like being alone.
Yeah.
And I remember the one day he was like, and he was on a lot of prescription pills. And I remember one day he was like, hey, you know, you want to share one of my pills? And I was like, okay. And that was like the beginning of the end for me, because for a long time, like that was my solution. And I justified, like I started to steal them from him because I felt like I deserved it. Like I deserved to use because, you know, he was ignoring me. I deserved to use because I took care of the house, you know, and I went on that way for quite some time. Until like the point where I was sick and tired of being sick and tired. Like for a while, like using made me feel like super mom. I felt like
Right.
I was able to like go to the PTA meetings and take my kids to play dates and get all the laundry done and have the perfectly clean house, you know, and keep up with things. And I felt like, you know, using really allowed me to do that until it stopped working. And I got to a point where like I was sick all the time. I was sick when I used, I was sick when I didn't use, I had no energy, I wasn't able to do anything. And like that was when I was like, all right, enough. Like I can't live this way anymore. And I went into a 30-day rehab program. And my rehab was, they only accepted people who had like military health insurance. So it was a pretty isolated thing. But my rehab was in a psych ward. So
Oh,
I was
shit.
like, yeah, so I didn't go to like one of these like fancy places where they got to like go out or even go outside. Like, no, it was like a one hallway place, like full out psych ward. And I remember the first girl I was roomed with, because like half the patients were addiction patients and the other half were psych patients. And the first person I got roomed with, like on the very first day I walked in, they were trying to convince her to shower. And she refused to shower because she thought the KGB was outside the window and that they were going to steal her dress. And so she wouldn't take it off. She wouldn't shower. And I remember like the first day there, I was like, why are they putting me with somebody who's so crazy?
Right.
You know? And I still remember I was there for about 4 days, and I really had seen like started to, you know, the people, they point out to you like the insanity of your disease, right? Like the crazy decisions I was making. And it was a very humbling experience to realize like she really wasn't any crazier than I was, you know, like I was like right where I needed to be.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of the start of my recovery. It was not that was my first clean date. I was clean from February until June. And on June 21st, which is my birthday, my husband at the time, he took me out to like this super fancy like restaurant where they had like tasting menus and wine pairing. And he was like, I'm going to do the wine pairing. You don't have to, but like maybe you want a few sips of wine, you know, with each meal. A few sips will be okay. And I was like, yes, it will. Now, mind you, like I was involved in a recovery program. I was doing what I thought was the right thing, but literally all it took was for somebody to be drinking in front of me and say, I think this is a good idea. And that was it. Like, that's all I needed. So by the end of dinner, I'm a little bit tipsy. And I said to him, I said, you know what, since it's my birthday, like, why don't you share one of your pills? And he lost it. He was like, that's not the same thing. It's completely different. And like, to me, it wasn't any different. Like, I'm feeling like a little bit messed up, like might as well go all the way.
Right.
Otherwise, it seemed like a waste. And we stopped at 7-Eleven on the way home. He went inside to get a pack of cigarettes, and I took pills right out of the glove box, and I was right back where I started. And I used again from that point until November 6th. And this November 6th, I will have 7 years clean.
That must have been like really difficult to be in the same house where there's pills all the time.
Oh, it was definitely hard. Like I would not ever recommend like getting clean in a house full of drugs. But like at the time, I didn't have a choice. You know, they said change people, places, and things. And like the hardest thing for me was like my people was my husband, my place was my own bathroom, and like things was 3:00 in the afternoon. All things that I couldn't change any of them. And I mean, for a while he did lock up his medications. It did get to a point after some time that it stopped bothering me as much. You know, it's like I got through early recovery, and then it wasn't such a thing. He changed his meds from pills to, they were like, it was still pain medication, but they weren't pills anymore. So like the trigger effect wasn't quite there, because I used to blow everything up my nose. like everything. Like it got to the point where like if I didn't have drugs, like I would crush up Tylenol and like blow it up my nose because it would like give me the feeling like maybe I was using. So
Right. It's like a placebo effect because you're like
yes,
getting that feel. I know exactly what you're talking about. I have never done it with Tylenol, but like whenever I was in my addiction, I would take water and shoot it up.
I can absolutely see that. It's like there's something about going through the motions that makes your brain like feel like maybe there's something. Like maybe I'm getting something from this, you know?
For sure. What tell me this, like, so when y'all were together, you were okay, so I can totally understand because I was in a relationship similar to that before I met my husband, where I almost felt like I was doing so much, like working so many jobs, taking care of the house, taking care of him, that it was like I deserved to have that treat to take my
Yep.
pills and be able to relax, you know?
Mm-hmm.
God, and it was so hard for me to like not want to do that. So I can just was there like a changing point where I mean, did the law get involved? Did they come and try to take y'all's kids, or was it just like you were just getting so bad that you were like, I have to stop this?
So him and I right now, 2 years ago, we separated like permanently. Like I'm in the process of a divorce now. I'm in a new relationship and everything. But back when I first got clean, we also separated. Right before we separated, I got a knock on my door one day while he was at work, and it was the police, and they served me with papers. My husband pressed charges against me for stealing his pills. So like the police showed up to our marital home for my husband pressing charges on me, and like my mind was blown. I was like, how dare he? Like how dare he? He's living with me, we're married, like how could you do that? And so we separated. We had split custody of the kids. I think we were separated for about 5 months. And I was really, really lucky. I was like a very functional, at least like pretend functional addict at the time. Like we didn't have child services involved. We didn't have the law involved, but like it was close. Like if I didn't go to rehab when I did, like it would have come to that because I
Oh,
was
for
almost
sure.
I couldn't take care of myself, let alone take care of my kids. It was literally like
Oh no. Did I lose you? Hold on, guys. Oh man. Jexi, are you there, girl? Come back to us. Okay, guys. I hope y'all can still hear me. Hey, the wilderness. Hey, Lisa. Hey, Darkset, Scott. Hey, Apache Wolf. Let's see. I'm gonna take this off, and we'll see if Jexi can come back on. Man, this is the only bad thing about going live and doing this, you guys, is that sometimes this happens. I'm so glad that you guys are all here. It literally makes my heart skip a beat. Oh no. It might be. Oh. Okay, I think you're back. Yay. Okay, girl.
that was my fault. That wasn't your program. I got extra excited and my hand hit the wire that my camera was plugged into my computer, and like I just disconnected all my stuff. So that wasn't on your end. That was my end. I'm sorry.
I was like, oh no, we're doing so good.
Yeah, that was totally me. I just unplugged everything. So sorry.
It's okay. About going live, this is the only thing that's hard for me about Hey Gold Dust, about going live is that there's like these little things that can happen during the live stream. And I love being able to do it because I feel like we can just come on here. Can you see the chat?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Okay.
I didn't realize I could until right now. But yes, I can see the chat.
Okay, and we can talk and I just like doing lives because it's so convenient. But then there's this little stuff that happens during them that I'm like, oh no. Anyway, okay, so let's keep on going. We're doing great. I love, like I was telling everybody, I knew some of your story, but I didn't know a lot of it. And so how did you get out of the relationship with your husband? Was it hard? I know there's a lot of women in the chat that will be able to relate to being in a relationship with somebody who has to take pills. And what was it like for you? How did you do it? How did you get the courage to leave? Tell us all about that.
Okay, so I left about 2 years ago, a little over 2 years ago. And the 2 years before that, before I left, my husband was taking very heavy doses of pain meds, and then he had gotten off of them. He was on high doses of fentanyl for years, like prescribed, and then he had gotten off of them, and he actually has like a major lawsuit against the pharmaceutical company and the doctor because they overprescribed him like on purpose, like they were making big money off of him. And the amount of fentanyl that he was on for so long actually did brain damage. So he already had brain damage, and it made it significantly worse. And what happened is that his whole personality changed, and he became like really emotionally and verbally abusive. And so for 2 years, like, our marriage was really awful. Like, it was just an awful environment to be in. We very rarely spoke. When we did, he was pretty cruel. And it was Labor Day weekend of 2017, and I had taken my daughter school shopping. And when we got home, she found a ring of mine on the ground, and she's like, "Hey, Ma, like, I think this is yours." And I looked at it, and I recognized it as a ring that I kept like in a jewelry box, like in the way back of my closet.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and I looked, and I realized like all of my jewelry was gone. And I knew at that point, like, things had gone to like a different level. And so I had also like, I went like school shopping. So let me just explain this. So he didn't let me have access to money for like a really long time, even though I was making money on my own. Like, I was working from home. I was making about $1,000 a month at the time, and I used to get paid on the first. And he would make me like put it in our joint account, and then he would take it along with all the other money. And he was making good money. He was working for the Department of Homeland Security, plus he was getting retirement from the military. So we were making good money, and I had no access to any of it. And so because I wanted my kids to have what they needed for school, that month before, I opened up my own bank account, and I didn't get a debit card because I had tried to do that like a year before, and he found the debit card and he withdrew all the money, and it didn't work. So I didn't even get a debit card. So it was like a account that was attached to my joint account that nobody knew about. So the day that I got paid, when I took my daughter school shopping, I actually transferred as soon as my paycheck hit, I transferred it all into this other account. And then like while I'm at the register, I would transfer the money into the joint account, use a debit card, and pay for it. And so he was really pissed off about that too. And he couldn't understand. He's like, "Why'd you spend all this money?" And I was like, "It's on what the kids need for school." Like, I didn't go out and like shop for myself. Like, they needed stuff for school. And it occurred to me then that like it was starting to affect my kids, because I was willing to live miserably. Like, I really was. I was willing to wake up every day, be anxious and miserable if it meant my kids were happy. And, when I realized that it was starting to affect them, and like the reality of it is it had affected them long before I had really realized it, But
oh yeah,
I took like what I had learned in recovery, and I was told like, look, like, when you're sick and tired of, the same thing, when you're tired of living in misery, like, you do something different, right? And then you ask for help and you take suggestion. And that's exactly what I did. Like, I made the decision to leave, and I was in typical addict fashion. I was like, I'm going to leave next week. And I remember my family was like, why next week? Like, no, like now, like while you're like, same thing, like when you make the decision to like go to treatment or something, right? You're like, oh yeah, I'll go to rehab in 3 days. Like, you're never going to get there. It's so
right.
my family was like, no, come now. And so I left that day. I left everything I had behind. I packed a bag of stuff for me. Each kid had a bag of clothes. I grabbed some of their favorite toys. I picked them up from their first day of school, and we went from Maryland to New Jersey, and we never looked back. And, it was a hard decision, but I definitely used everything I learned in recovery, like, in that situation.
How long had you been sober when you guys decided to leave? What, 4 years then?
Just under 5 years.
Okay, that's so. We think that we're making sacrifices to stay with these guys who are treating us terrible, and we think, well, maybe it's not affecting our kids, but our kids see it through us. Like, they see us sad, they see us stressed out, they see you being, even if he wasn't like beating you or something, just saying mean stuff to you and being disrespectful. I totally, like, I'm proud of you for leaving. I know that must have been really hard because you get so comfortable in relationships.
Oh, absolutely. And like, I had been married for 11 years, and, to walk away from an 11-year relationship that we had already been separated, and I had decided when we got back together, like, I'm never getting divorced. Like, I'm not doing this again. Like, we did the separation thing. We decided we're getting back together. Like, that's it. We're going to stick with that then. And so, like, I had promised my kids, like, that we were never getting divorced. It was never going to happen. Like, I really believed that. Like, I really believed that there was nothing he could do that would change my mind. And I was so afraid of leaving. Like, I was more afraid of leaving than I was, like, when I first got clean. And, like, I didn't think any fear could top that. And Gold Dust Woman asked, how long was my active substance use? The first time I used, I was like 13. But like my really, really bad like opiate use, I would say, was probably like a solid 3 years of like everyday opiate use. That was like a mess. But when I finally like made the decision to leave, like that sense of freedom, like it's like that first time where you wake up and do you remember like the first time that you got through the whole day and didn't think about using? And
It
you were
was a
like, oh my
miracle.
gosh. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was literally like that feeling, like that same feeling of like, oh my gosh, like my life is really like there's hope for something better. It was that same like oh my gosh feeling,
For sure. That's hard to make that change. And then when you get out of that and you're on your own, that's what makes it so difficult, is that it's scary. Even though you were in a horrible situation and you knew you were going to be better off getting away from there, it's the change that's hard to make, just like we were miserable in our addiction, but we know that. We know
exactly.
we know what the day is going to bring. Okay, I'm going to wake up, I'm going to get high today, I'm going to crash my car, and that's
exactly.
normal. So okay, so tell me this. Okay, so how did you get into, because I know you're really big into Narcotics Anonymous.
Yeah.
How did you get into Narcotics Anonymous when you first started out? Were you afraid to go to meetings? Were you nervous to be around the people? Tell us how that went.
Okay, so the rehab I went to, as I said, was like in a psych ward. And the only time that we were like allowed, it was in a hospital. And the hospital had made an arrangement with both NA and AA that they could have meetings in the cafeteria rent free, so that there was meetings for the people from the rehab to go to. So we were allowed to like leave the ward to go to the cafeteria and like sit through an open meeting. So that was like my first exposure. They were mostly AA, but there was one night a week that it was NA. And there was something about the NA meetings there that clicked with me. I liked, because I didn't feel like I fit in with AA, because in my mind, AA was alcohol. And like, and I've been to plenty of meetings where in AA where they're accepting of you regardless. It's not to say like people aren't welcoming, but there was something about NA at the very beginning that I felt like, oh, these are my people, And I remember I drove. So when I got out of rehab, my like little clique of people that I went to rehab with, we all kind of got out at the same time. And we were all from kind of different areas, but we would drive to like where the hospital was. There was a bunch of meetings in that area. We would all drive to meetings there, even though it was like nowhere near where any of us lived, because that's the meetings, we were comfortable in that area. So we would see people that we would see at the meetings at the hospital. So when I first got clean, just so you know, I was so afraid of life. Like I was so afraid. I didn't know how to live. So I would leave my house at like 4:00 to go meet up with these people from my rehab. We would sit in like Wendy's, eat dinner. Then we would sit in the parking lot, and like the meeting would start at like 8:00. But I would leave my house at 4 because I didn't know what to do. And so then the meeting would go, and we would stay in the parking lot until they literally kicked us out. And then I would drive home and like go straight to bed. Like I spent a lot of time that way because I was so afraid of like living. And
right. So afraid of deviating from that little plan that she had, because it's like, heaven forbid I go this way, and what if I run into somebody or I find drugs or anything could happen. I totally understand.
Yeah, I was like, and I remember like one time, like my husband at the time, he was like, don't you think like maybe you'd want to try some meetings here? Like I heard there's meetings here. And what was funny, what really turned me on to NA was the people and where I lived. I had gone to NA meetings I would say probably almost a year before I ended up getting clean. And I had showed up to a couple of meetings. I got a couple of phone numbers, and there was this one guy who had said that used to send out like the Just for Today meditation in like a voice message. And he had like a huge list of people that he would send it out to. And he's like, do you want to be on this list? And so a year before I got clean, I got put on this mailing list where I'm getting like this daily meditation, right, in a text. And so when I made the decision to go to meetings closer to my house, his number was the only one I had. So I texted him and I was like, hey, do you know if there's a meeting somewhere tonight? And he was like, yes, there is. He sent me a picture of his face. He said, I'll meet you in the parking lot. And when I got there, he was in the parking lot with a girl, this girl, her name was Corey. And as soon as I got there, I saw him, he's like, this is Corey. She's going to help you. Like, good to see you. And walked away and like left me with the women so that it wasn't like a weird, awkward thing. And, you know, I just really found a welcoming place. And what I loved about NA, and really it's like this in all 12-step meetings, but what I loved about NA was they loved me at my worst. You know, like there was nothing I could share or say where people judged me, because like my favorite thing is like sit in a 12-step meeting, share about like the worst, most awful thing you've ever done, and like look around the room and you see people like nodding their heads like, yep, me too. And like, I needed that. I needed to feel like I wasn't alone.
And I feel like that's what I want. So I try to encourage people to like get out and like really try any kind of meeting. I don't care if it's AA, NA, CA, Celebrate Recovery, whatever meeting it is. And I feel like now that we have like online meetings and we have so much access to be able to talk to people through the computer, that I know that I had to have that real life experience going to meetings face to face with people.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
That made a really big difference in my early recovery. If I hadn't had my sponsor who went to meetings with me, who made me go basically to 90 meetings in 90 days, like I don't even know if I would have stayed sober, because I had real life people that rallied around me, you know?
Yeah, exactly.
And I don't know if I feel like we're doing the best we can to give people that support on YouTube, but I feel like there's nothing like having that in real life.
I absolutely agree. And one of the other thing that I really liked about NA is like all about hugging. Like they don't shake hands, they hug. Like even at the end of the meeting, they don't hold hands. They like hold each other's bodies, you know? And for me, like when I first got clean, physical contact was really difficult for me. It was really uncomfortable. Like opiates had numbed my senses. And so when I finally started to get them back, I was really uncomfortable. It felt weird to like be touched. And I didn't know if I would ever be like comfortable again having that physical contact, and being thrown into an environment where like I didn't know how badly I needed that kind of contact, and have people like walk up and hug me and say they love me and like have a seat next to me and like help me get coffee and really make me feel welcome in, like, as you said, like a real life sense. I love online stuff, but to me, it's like I still go to meetings in real life because I like that feeling. I like getting, you know, I like being able to hug somebody. I like that squeeze, like that good hug, like not like the pat on the back, you know?
Right. And I also feel like you meet people in real life and you guys can like, they can come by and like pick you up and you can go have coffee together and you can like okay. So something I was talking about the other day was like, I guess I invest a lot of time into the friendships that I build online. And what I'm realizing is that a lot of people that have me as a friend online, maybe it's not as serious to them, the friendship, because it's an online friendship. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I feel like a way to not have to go through that is to go into these meetings in real life and get a support system that rallies up around you. Like I always try to, and I know that on your channel, you want to encourage people to do the same thing, like really get a support system. why, can you tell me this? What made you decide to start a YouTube channel sharing your experience?
So for like a job, one of the things I do is I run people's social media accounts. And I was running a YouTube channel for a nonprofit. It was actually like a large channel. They had like over 100,000 subscribers. And so I kind of saw how a lot of the YouTube stuff worked on the back end. And one day I was just looking to see like what was out there. And I realized like was really very little recovery content online. And the ones that were there, like they're all small channels. There's very, very few that have like any type of real following. And I was like, I do have experience, and I do, my general way of speaking is not like preaching to people, like my general way of speaking about recovery is simply sharing my experience. And I was like, I get asked to speak at a lot of different events, and I thought like how maybe it would be helpful if I just recorded myself sharing about experiences I had and things I was going through. And, I know how things work on the back end. So, there's a void there. Let's just see. And I have to say, like, as soon as the first couple of videos I posted, like I got such an overwhelming response from like other people in the recovery community on YouTube. Like you had reached out and a few other people had reached out, and I was like, that really kind of kept me wanting to do it. Like I felt like we built a community of, like our recovery community on YouTube. And I feel like we're our own little family, and it's kind of really made me stick with this.
Yeah, it's encouraging to have. I know what you mean. Like we're a crew. We got a whole crew of recovery YouTubers, and there really is like a need for more people that are sharing the recovery side of addiction.
I agree.
I feel like there's a lot of people talking about what drugs are like and what it's like to be in active addiction and but I want to know what you're doing to stay sober. Like, how are you staying sober? And so if somebody asked you this question and they said, "Hey, Jexi, what are you doing to have almost 7 years of sobriety?" What would be the things that you would tell them that you do to stay sober?
So I would say like the most important thing is I stay in the today, right? Like I try not to get overwhelmed by all the things that could happen next week, next month, next year. I don't think about the fact I can't use forever. I don't think about the fact I can't drink at someone's wedding or smoke pot on the beach in Maui when I retire, right? Like I keep it in today. The other thing is I have people in my life that I'm completely honest with. I've learned in recovery that like we don't have to be completely honest about everything to everybody, but we need people in our lives that we can be completely honest with about everything. And I keep people in my life that I can do that with, that I can share things with, that I'm not afraid to talk to about, because sometimes like my hardest thing, the thing I struggle with on the day to day is feeling like whatever I'm going through or whatever I'm feeling like doesn't matter enough to like call and talk to somebody about it. Like I don't want to bother them with that. It's not that big of a deal, so I need people in my life who can kind of sense when I'm like that, who can call me out on it, who can be like, hey, what's going on? And, just staying very active in my recovery, I would say, is the third thing. Like I go to 3 meetings in real life a week. I usually do another 2 online. And then, I communicate with people like you and other people on YouTube in recovery. But like recovery stays a part of my life. It's not something I do. It's part of who I am, if that makes sense.
For sure. It makes total sense because I've heard so many people and say, when I get sober, recovery is not going to be my life. Like, I want to get sober from my addiction and then I want to move on from that, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not to say that we're not moving on, but like recovery is it's like my passion now, and I think that you're a lot like I am, where it's like, it's not because I'm doing this because it's like, I'm reminded of my addiction every single day, or I'm obsessed. It's like, this is what makes me feel like complete. Like it helps me so much to keep my recovery at the front. And I've also learned from experience, when I don't do that, then I usually relapse,
Absolutely.
Well, my kid wanted to know, he says, what do you do in between meetings to have fun? Like when you're not at a meeting, what do you do to have fun sober?
So, okay, so I'm a mom, so like my sense of fun is like probably not other people's sense of fun.
Yeah.
What's actually kind of fun is like my kids were too young to remember my active addiction, but they were a big part, they're an active role in my recovery. So it's I was just gonna say this before I answer this question, is like there's times where my kids are like, how come you didn't go to this meeting? Like I thought you were going, like what's going on? Or, like they're very involved, and that helps. In regards to fun, so I do a lot of things. This weekend I'm actually going to a convention. What I love about 12-step programs as a whole is they do conventions. Even if you're not sure if you want to be a part of a program, go to a convention, because I will tell you, when I had 6 months clean, I went to my very first convention in Ocean City, Maryland. I came back from a weekend there and I had no voice for 3 days. And it was literally because I laughed so hard the whole time. I hadn't laughed in years, like years. Like I forgot how to laugh, and I was laughing so hard. I am in a relationship now too, so I spend time, I spend time with my boyfriend, I spend time with my kids. But like, to be completely honest, like today, I can be totally comfortable, like sitting in my room with my daughter or my son and like listening to them tell me about their day. Like sometimes like that's fun for me, but really anything can be fun for me now. Like I didn't think, I don't know if I assume that it was like this for you too, Nicole, where like before I got clean, I couldn't imagine like seeing a movie without being high. I couldn't imagine like going bowling without drinking, right? Like it didn't make any sense. And like now I wonder why I ever did that, because now I can remember having fun. Like I don't wake up the next day like, what did we do?
Yeah, for sure. I always felt like I had to, and I think it was because I think we do that when we were getting high. I got to get high to go play ball. I got to get high to hang out with my friends. I think it's because like we were so unsure of ourselves and insecure, and we had become so dependent on the drugs. But now we're like becoming secure in ourselves and getting our confidence back, and like we can just have fun being with our kids or with ourselves. I love being alone. But when I was in active addiction, shit, I never wanted to be alone, you know, because I was afraid, because every time I would be alone, then I would be thinking about something not
Right.
good, you know?
Absolutely.
I was just going to ask, oh, that's what I was going to ask you. Tell us this. What is it like dating sober?
So I just celebrated 2 years with my boyfriend. He is also in recovery. He has just under a year less clean time than I do. So he also has 6 years clean right now. He had 6 years in August. And like, look, it's not perfect. Like, in fact, we argued earlier today, right? But what's really great is the fact that because we both work a recovery program, like he's never cruel, like we don't say terrible, mean things to each other. Like, and we communicate, and like literally like the programs of recovery have like taught us like how to communicate with each other. And when things get really bad, like he'll say like, can I just call you back? And he'll literally like go call a sponsor and then call me back, right? Like dating somebody in recovery is so much easier than dating somebody who's outside recovery. But again, we both have some time. I think if I had like 30 days clean trying to date somebody, like I'm not sure that would be the best plan. Like dating somebody and we both have about equal time, equal experience in recovery has made a big difference.
Has it been like when y'all first started dating, were you like, I don't know, for me, I was afraid when me and Neil, because we got sober together, I was afraid that when I sobered up, he wasn't going to love me anymore. Were you like, I don't know, since y'all are both in recovery and you both y'all had some years sober, you were probably already like comfortable in your own skin. So when you came together, it was kind of just like an easy flow, huh?
Yeah, it's funny because even like the very beginning, like, so he had asked me out on a date and I was like really? Like, I don't think anybody ever asked me out on a date, like before I got married, like I did the friends with benefits thing. I did like the one night stand thing. I never did like the date thing. So I was like really confused. I was like, really? Like a date? And he's like, yeah, like I want to take you out to dinner. And I was like to a restaurant? Like it was so confusing. And So he did, and it was great. And, you know, look, the fact is I got together with him very shortly after I had left my marriage. Again, I was in a marriage, the last 2 years of my marriage, like I was more like living with a roommate. It's not like I hopped from one relationship to another, even though on paper that's what it looks like. Like when I told my parents I was dating him, nobody in my family was like, that's too soon. They were like, oh, it's about time, you know? So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, it was, I was really honest with him. I was like, look, I have a lot of baggage. Like I'm coming from, you know, coming off a bad relationship. I have 2 children. You know, I'm a single mom. I'm living with my parents. Like my life is not perfect. And I made sure I was super honest up front so that there was nothing, you know, I gave him the opportunity to make a decision. And when he was like, that's not going to scare me off, then we literally, we stayed in the today, right? We took it one day at a time, and it's been over 2 years, and so far so good, you know?
Yeah. Do you think you guys will get married?
My kids sure want it.
Oh, that's so
I have to get
awesome.
officially divorced first. I still, on paper, I'm still married, even though what I say we're divorced, but like on paper, and my boyfriend's old school. He's like, I'm not going to propose to you until you're officially divorced. I'm not going to propose to somebody who's married, you know? So it's a logistic thing, but my kids are literally like, they text him. They're like, are you going to propose soon? When are you going to propose? Like, I feel bad, you know?
Do you guys ever find yourselves competing with each other in your recovery? Like, I know with me and Neil, sometimes we'll have like, I don't know, kind of just little recovery arguments, like where I believe one way and he may believe the other way. And do you guys go to meetings together? Do you guys have your own separate meetings?
So we definitely, we go to one meeting a week together. It's like we both have a service commitment and Saturday night meeting that we go to together. But otherwise, I mean, occasionally there's other meetings, but for the most part, the rest of the week we go to meetings on our own. A lot of it's schedules. I go to meetings during the day while my kids are at school. He goes to meetings in the evening. So we don't have the same schedule. The one thing I will tell you that came up early on that like we had to like squash because it was causing problems was like comparing each other's step work. I came from an area where step work was done really slowly.
Mm-hmm.
We didn't have a lot of people who were clean or who had like a long period of time. So like I was on step 3, my sponsor was on step 5, her sponsor was on 7, like her sponsor was on 10. Like I didn't know anybody who had worked all 12 steps. Up here, people work through the steps much, much quicker. So like there are people who have, 2 years clean and they've already worked all 12 steps. And like to me, that was mind blowing. So he's much further along than I am. And there would be times where like something would come up and he'll be like, oh, well, you just wait till you get to step 6 and this will figure itself out. And I would get really mad because I would be like, what? That's like, so you want me to say like what? When you're stressing out over something you can't control, I'm supposed to say what? Oh, well, wait till you get back around to step 3 and you'll figure that out. Like I was like, we can't do that. Like it sounds like a diss, you know? Like I was
Yeah.
like, don't do that. So we don't say anything about step work to each other anymore.
I was the same way with Neil at the beginning of our relationship. And now I realize how condescending that sounds,
Yes,
So
it really does.
we stay away from that kind of stuff, and we just try to help each other and encourage each other, and stay on
Yeah.
the right path together. Um, okay, what I was going to ask you now is so if you could say one thing to somebody that is in their active addiction that's really wanting to get sober, what would be some things that you would tell them?
The first thing I would say is that like it's possible. Because I know for me, like I didn't believe it to be possible. Like, and the second thing I didn't believe when I first got clean was that I could be not miserable. Like once you guys told me that I could get off drugs, like once I started believing that, like fine. But I thought that I had damaged my brain so much that I was going to be miserable forever. And I think that for anybody who's still struggling, recovery is not just about not using, it's about not being miserable too. And like there does come a time where you won't be miserable. Like if you really work a recovery program, even just the bare minimum of a recovery program, you could stop being miserable, and for me, like that was the hope. The hope was I could smile again, I could laugh again. And don't be afraid to ask for help. Not everybody goes through recovery in the same way. I needed a 30-day rehab. I needed to be locked in a psych ward where like I had no access to anything. Like that had to be for me. And then, as I said, I work a 12-step program. That works for me. Everybody has their own way of working recovery. And I think what's important is that you don't give up. Find what works for you. Find what makes it so that you can get one day clean and stick with it. Like I think there's too much judgment in recovery, being like, oh, well, I go to NA, you go to AA, like I'm better than you, or you take medication and you don't, like this one's better than you. Like I think there's way too much judgment in recovery. And if you're hanging around with people who are judging each other's recovery, like find new people to ask for suggestions from, like I know a lot of people who recover differently than I do. And, they're supportive. I think that we need to lift each other up and not, that's the hope, right? Like the hope is that even if you do things differently, like you can still get clean. I would suggest you follow suggestions of people who are doing well. Like if somebody who's relapsing every 4 days, like maybe that's not the suggestions you want to follow, but if there's people who have clean time who are happy and that's what you want, like that's who you ask. Like I was told to ask people for suggestions, the people who had what I wanted, the people who were living a good life, who didn't just say the right things, but were living the way I wanted to live,
Right, for sure. That's so important. And I was talking about that earlier today. It's easy to come on and tell you, oh, I have this book memorized and I can tell you all the stuff that it says in there. But if I can't put that into action in my life, then then I'll be miserable, And
exactly.
I also want, I know you're the same way. You feel the same way. Like, if you're struggling and you are relapsing, coming back, like none of us are going to ever judge you for falling.
No way.
We've all been there before. We've all fell. And even if, okay, so like with Jexi, let's say me and Jexi, we don't get along. Let's say she pissed me off and I don't talk to her anymore. If she relapsed and I saw that she was struggling, I would absolutely go to her and reach out. And I know that she would do the same for me. And I just think it's really important, like no matter what, if it were on YouTube, if it's in real life, like this is our lives. Like if we don't stay sober, the next step is death.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't want to lose nobody, especially people that I've gotten to know over here on YouTube so well. And I just want to keep trying to encourage people to, reach out for help and know that they're not alone.
Absolutely. Yeah, because I think one of the things that I've always liked about recovery, what I interpret as recovery is that, like, as you said, it doesn't matter. Like, we're there for each other, whether we like the person or not. There's tons of people that I come across at meetings who aren't my favorite people, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to help them because, look, I'm sure I wasn't a lot of people's favorite person either when I was using, right? Like when we're using, we're nuts. That's just how it is, right? So when we're struggling, like, yeah, we make bad decisions. We do hurtful things. We lie, we cheat, we steal. Like we're not great people, but it doesn't mean that we can't get better. And so I think by having people who are in recovery for long term, like we can look at people who are struggling and see the struggle, right? Like we can look past the struggle and see the person and be like, you know what, they're not a bad person. They're just hurting, And I think that you do a really good job of that, Nicole. Like I see you reach out to people who are struggling regularly, and that's all we can do, right? It's like let people know like they're not alone.
I feel like sometimes I'm like trying to like win people over and cheer them on, and it's like I just want people to get their lives together and I want them to be happy. Like I genuinely want you to be happy. I want everybody in the chat to be happy because I remember what it was like being miserable, and we all have been there. That's the worst place to be, is in active addiction, miserable.
Absolutely.
So
and it's even worse being in recovery miserable. Like I let myself be miserable in recovery for like way too long.
How do you think a person can make sure that they don't get complacent in their recovery? because I know that happens to a lot of us that have been in recovery for multiple years. Sometimes we get complacent. What would you tell somebody that's struggling with complacency?
I would say, like, yeah, that's definitely, like, probably the hardest part of recovery once you have time, right? Is not getting complacent. Like, that's one of the reasons that I got stuck in, like, the last, the 2 years that I say I was in my marriage, like, before I left, I was, like, miserable, is because I was complacent. I wasn't going to regular meetings. I mean, I was going, but, like, not really as often as I should have. I also wasn't sharing openly and honestly with anybody. Like, I gave, like, little pieces, right? So my suggestion against complacency is, like, one, do something for your recovery every day. Like, it doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you have to go to a meeting every day, but, like, I don't go to meetings every day, but I do something for my recovery every day. And I'm honest. I need people in my life who tell me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear, right? I have to, if someone calls me and, like, says whatever, right? I don't immediately react. I don't immediately, like, go and start yelling back on the phone or getting defensive, right? I really listen, because a lot of times people are telling me things that I really need to hear. And if I'm defensive and I close them down right away, like, I'm not going to get the help that I need, because usually I need help before I realize I need help,
Oh yeah, for sure. Oh, okay. Look, I'm trying to think of, is there anything else I want to ask you, because I'm, like, kind of just doing this by the seat of my pants. I'm so glad that you have come on, and I know I want everyone to go to your channel and subscribe to your channel. Like, I've been going back and forth on who I want to have on here as a guest and what women I want to feature on my channel, and I was like, out of all the people that I could think of, like, the first woman, I wanted to have you on here, because you do what you say you're going to do, and you live your recovery for real. And for me, it's been so hard for me to find people that are doing what they say they're doing, and so I have so much respect for you, Jexi. I really, really do. Like, you got bomb ass recovery, and I hope that I can stay on my path for as long as you have, and build my recovery as strong as you have, because you're doing a really good job. And I'm so proud of you.
Oh, thank you. I'm really glad.
I'm proud to call you my friend, and I guess I'll let you go. You guys go.
Can you tell all your people that in like 20 minutes, I have a live trivia game on my channel, and they're more than welcome to come play.
Girl, tell them all about your channel. Tell them what days you go live, all that stuff. Go ahead. You got the floor.
Okay. So I upload usually once or twice a week. I only share my experience. You'll never hear me preaching or telling you things you should do. I just tell you what's going on with me. But every Wednesday at 9 p.m., we do a live trivia game, because you know what? Recovery can be fun. It is not recovery-based topics. It is all broad topics. It is like going to pub trivia. There are people in recovery who come play. There's people from all over the internet. There is no drama. We have the only rule we have is you can't talk about, like, literally no drama. That's our rule. So you can't talk about other YouTubers. You can't talk about politics. You can't talk about any of that. It's just about having fun. And we do it every Wednesday at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, which is in about 20 minutes. And also, if you're ever interested, you can follow me on Instagram and Twitter. It's According to Jexi, same as my YouTube channel. That's all. That's all I do.
Next time you come on my channel, I want to dive into some, like, controversial topics that we can talk back and forth about. Okay.
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Girl. Well, I love you. Thank you so much for coming on my channel, and I'll talk to you later. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Y'all go subscribe to her channel. All right.
Bye, Nicole.
Bye, girl. All right. Good deal. Okay, you guys. I really, really hope you guys enjoyed Jexi on the channel this evening. She is a really great girl. Like I said, she's got strong recovery. Please go over and subscribe to her channel. It's called According to Jexi. Like she said, she's going to be going live in 20 minutes to do live stream trivia. They have so much fun over there. Y'all really enjoy it. So go over there, subscribe to her channel. Thank you for coming in and hanging out with me tonight, you guys. I'm gonna keep on rolling with the interviews. Let me know if you guys have anyone that you want me to have on the channel and do an interview with. Okay, especially women in recovery, because I don't know a lot of women that are sober in recovery that will come on and share their experience, strength, and hope. So if you know somebody, please message me and link me up with them, because I would love to have them on the channel. So I'm going to end it here. I'll let y'all go. I hope you guys have a great night, and I love you so very much. If you're struggling, you can always text me at the phone number on the screen, or you can call me. All right, you guys, I love y'all, and I'll see you guys tomorrow night.